Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Nullform No. 4 by Dem Mikhailov, translated by Colin Parker, narrated by Jeffrey Kafer. Chapter 1. "And what are you smiling at?" Yorka's interest was infused with deep suspicion. "I just like the morning after a fight," I muttered. "Who is she?" "Who is who?" "Whoever's all-night rumble with you could be heard along the whole corridor." "Yeah, right, and the locals don't like shouting," I said sarcastically. "That's the whole point," Rek laughed. "The local suckers were herring around in search of the lucky lady in their ranks. We've been approached 5 times. Nobody can find her." "And tell them they won't," I said, waving a dismissive hand and piling my plate with cold fish and green puree. I wasn't with anybody. I was gratifying myself, hence the orgasmic shouting. "Don't talk bullshit, Goblin." "I don't know who it was," I admitted sincerely. "I was drunk. I didn't get a good look, and she was the first one who came along. I don't see why you're so interested, Goblin." "I'm just fed up to the elf's teeth," Yorka shrugged, "with all these whorehouse questions. Oh, here he comes. He was particularly interested, except the only thing he didn't do was ask directly who exactly Elb the Goblin had fucked." "How rude you are," I said and clicked my tongue. "Were you born in the outskirts or something?" "Or something." We were approached by a bordello chap, a young lad with a blinding professional smile, who pushed a cart bearing my possessions. "Good morning, Master Elb." "Good morning. Thank you for the delivery. I'm told my bedroom life is of interest to you, no?" "Oh, come now, not at all." "That's what she says." I pointed at the choking Yorka. "I asked a few questions," the lad admitted, "but I personally am not remotely interested in your bedroom life, Master Elb." "An honest reply," I chuckled. "Can I be of further service?" "What's the weather like outside?" "It's bucketing down piss and shit," he reported nonchalantly. "The weather has gone mental. The water level is twice higher than usual." "I understand. Dismissed," I said, and turned towards a huge wall screen displaying seagulls wandering about on dirty wet sand. Bowing low, the lad retreated, but he hadn't managed to exit the hall before a dozen hetero streetwalkers waltzed in. And how they waltzed. Shoulders and heads lowered, hunched backs, heavy plodding gaits, hoarse-tired voices, makeup-streaked faces, lusterless rags hanging like withered, crumbling leaves from frames that had seen no little action during the night. And this was the elite, seeing as how they were allowed to eat in this hall. Lip-smacking elite suckers after a full night's work, haggard, bedeviled, hating everyone and everything. Why did the sight seem so familiar? Tired hookers returning home from a night of simulated bliss. Why did I not find the sight repulsive? It was more familiar, but from a long time ago. Had I been a pimp in my previous life? I doubted it very much. Mine was a different skill set and character. Yet there was something decidedly familiar about those drawn and exhaustion-grayed faces with the messed-up makeup, which made the suckers look more like blackballed, unfunny clowns stepping disharmoniously into the mouth of an incinerator. "Elb!" "Yes, you rambunctious goblin girl." I frowned. "I'm listening." The girl faltered, took a short pause to glance at Bask, and continued decisively. "Bask and I have talked everything through. We're with you." "Ah, the secret negotiations of the rank-and-file behind the commander's back." I nodded my head regretfully. "You ought to be stood against the wall for that. Not shot, though, but rather smiled at lovingly before being hammered into that same freaking wall with needle-gun butts and hard enough to leave the surface perfectly smooth afterwards." "Commander." The blind zombie's usually impassive face displayed a whole sea of emotions. "Don't think. Only kidding," I said. "I did order each of you to give it close thought and weigh everything up before you made your decision. Well done for bringing it up yourselves. So, what has the dashing infantry decided? I was listening, but could you just repeat it?" "So, we're staying," Yorka blurted out. "In the brothel?" "With you." "I see." I looked up from my near-empty plate and fixed the Lady Goblin with a long and thoughtful stare. You're staying with me? Highfalutin words won't cut it with me, you stupid girl. I need hard and sure specifics. You are with me where? Why? On what conditions? Will you be with me until it gets too hot, at which point you slip away unnoticed with your few thousand saved-up soul? Will you be with me until your wholesome goblin principles consider Elb has become a stone-cold psychopath and it's time to ditch him? And if in 5 minutes' time somebody shoots Bask in the head and he snuffs it in a puddle of brains and blood, will you stay with me then? What about you, Bask? If Yorka croaks it, will you remain in step with me, or will you go off and haul gray slime during the daytime and dull the anguish with moonshine and drugs in the evenings? Or are you willing to accept any possible loss in any act I might commit, obey my every command, and travel the road with me to the very end, no matter how long and terrible it might be? Silence. I nodded my understanding. You weren't expecting that, huh? You thought you would simply express your agreement with weary nonchalance, Elb would smile joyously, and the question would be closed, yes? Silence. Well? I piled on the pressure. You had plenty of time. You were discussing it all night, so what have you decided? The zombie stepped forward, felt about with his hand, and finding Yorka's belly, pushed her backwards out of the way. Raising a slashed face, he fixed his open, empty eye socket on me. We are with you, Commander, to the very end, no matter what that may be. Are you willing to obey my every command? Yes. Yes, Yorka seconded Bask. Wreck the Orc snorted quietly as he busied himself with the most important matter, the depositing on a neighboring table of a tray bearing the remains of some fish, while simultaneously shoveling the fattiest pieces into his gob, and the rest into a plastic container of puree snaffled from the same long-suffering common pot. Well played, Orc. Quality grub is no small thing for a soldier. Well, that's fantastic, I said, beaming a wide smile and leaning my head once more over my plate, ordering unassumingly. Yorka, Bask, that inker and those two suckers sitting at that table over there are slurping too noisily. Vampires like that are a lost cause. Kill them. Huh? Yorka's eyes nearly popped out of her head with a shock. What? Kill them, I repeated. Right now. Silence, and exchanged glances. A reminder was in order. I have given you a command, the kind of command that might be filed under the heading every. Why are you just standing there? You may use your awls, knives, and bare hands, or you might shove their freaking fish down their freaking gullets to choke them while we sit here eating and watching. Quit joking around, Yorka said wanly. I looked at Bask. The blind zombie was wavering. Unlike Yorka, he at least turned in the direction of the chewing sucker's table, leaned his head to zero in on his target, and reached for the handle of the awl tucked into his belt. Yet he remained sitting. Go on. I gave him a verbal nudge. Go on, zombie, forward. Kill the suckers. Commander. Without turning back around, the zombie took a short step towards the target. You're not I am not joking. I gave you an order, and I'm being forced to repeat it. Kill the suckers, zombie. Stop kidding around, Elb. Yorka's reminder of her presence was much louder this time. We trust you, with all our souls, and you... What the hell do I need with your soul, you idiot girl? I stared at her, amazed. Wake up. Get a grip. Think. Why would I need your soul? Shove it up your goblin ass and compact it down as hard as you can. I do not need your soul. I need capable, malicious, and compliant fighters. Not fighters who are going to wonder whether it's good or bad, acceptable or not. I need fighters who, upon hearing the command to kill the freaking suckers and the shitting bald inker at that freaking table by the artificial riverbank, immediately go and kill the freaking suckers and the shitting bald inker. That is how you show your faith in me. Action, not reasoning. The precise and timely execution of an order. That is evidence of faith in your commander. All eating had ceased. One by one, the weather-beaten ladies and gents of the night raised their heads and turned their surprised and rather frightened faces in our direction. Especially shell-shocked and truly petrified were the freaking suckers and the bald inker sitting at the table I had indicated. "But why them?" Yorka exploded. "What have they done?" "That should be of no concern to you." Tossing aside my empty plate, I rose, and with my fists on the table roared angrily, That should be of no concern to you. The only thing of concern to you should be the execution of a command. The chain must be simple. Order, navigation, execution, report. End of story. Hey, man. The bald youth, whose eyes and lips were thickly made up, rose from the table and said ingratiatingly, "Don't joke like that." "Sit down and shut up, meat boy." Rek tore himself away from his fish to produce an ursine roar, and the inker flopped back down onto his chair so quickly you'd think his hamstrings had been cut. "I'll do it," Bask said. "By myself, all of them, right now, but don't drag Yorka into it. She has a delicate nature." "You don't say," I said derisively. "A delicate nature? So in a real battle situation where she has to run an innocent old lady through in order to skewer the liver of the bastard using her as cover, will her delicate nature not be a hindrance then too? And will we not all die because the bastard manages to reload his needle gun and spike our heads? Enough of this freaking comedy. Have you eaten? Now get out of here, both of you, and either disappear forever or come back here genuinely prepared to execute my every command. Every single one, no matter what it is. Commander, scram! On the double!" The trembling Yorka stepped back and snatched a backpack from her chair. Bask followed her, and they marched off together. "Hey!" I shouted after them. They turned back and froze in expectation. "Should you decide to return, know that you will immediately be dispatched to kill those two freaking suckers and the bald inker. That is all. No more joking, guys. No more child's play. From now on, it's strictly adult fuckfests, and I want to be sure of each of my fighters. Now get out of here and think about it." Yorka about-faced and strode sweepingly away. Bask gave a short nod and hurried after her, catching her up by the exit and disappearing through the doors, next to which stood a smiling lad with slicked-back hair. "So what about this lot?" The chomping orc poked a puree-dipped finger in the direction of the victims cringing behind their table. "Stick it to them? Maybe slam the bald one's mug into the table a dozen times? They really are slurping, the bitches, and they took the best bits of fish. One of the suckers, a thin, dark-skinned girl in her early 20s, squeaked her fright. "We didn't." "You just go on eating," I said, waving a hand. Snatching up my empty plate, I strolled over to the table bearing the remains of the viands. "There's only violent puree and jugs of nuts left." "It'll do," I replied, taking the last protein bar from my belt bag. When I returned and sat down next to Rek, who had packed the remains of his food into his backpack, he slapped me on the shoulder with his typical lack of ceremony and said, "Fuck it." "Fuck what?" "Fuck everything. You did the right thing, Commander. What's the point of dragging people like that around? Strange. And besides, they're in love, and that really sucks for me and you. In battle, they be looking to cover each other first and foremost and will get killed because of their freaking love and pink milk soppery. Why bother? Let them disappear. They can find themselves a steel lair and settle down. Copula will watch over them, and we can continue." "Some hot fish is on the way, gentlemen," said the lad by the door, "and a carafe of excellent moonshine. Perhaps I might interest you in some tablets. I have a wide selection." "Sure," I replied, taking 5 baggies from his extended hand. "The moonshine in a bottle and the fish in a container. We'll take it with us if that's not a problem." "Not at all. Never. We'll wrap everything up. Might I also be allowed to add 30 protein bars and a couple of bottles of excellent nuts?" "That would be great. Everything will be ready in 10 minutes." The lad bowed and laughed. During the time of our short conversation, all the creatures of the night had vacated the hall, and the two of us were left alone, poking lazily at our breakfasts and watching the wet seagulls on the screen. The ever-so-professional servant boy kept his word and personally delivered what he had promised. Noting his approach, I finished off my second huge glass of water and stood. "Time to move out. Let's go." "Why are you looking so pleased?" I asked, looking askance at Rek. He flashed a broad grin full of teeth. "Why not? Blood, sex, drink, food, blood, sex, drink, food, blood, sex, drink, food, pleasure on loop." "Have you been to the med block?" "Not yet." "Forward." "Roger, Commander." The lad placed a hefty bag with a wide strap on the table. The nymph copula has asked me to remind you to check the nearest ATM. It's 60 yards from here." "Uh-huh. She added something else, but I don't know if it's worth—" "The old woman asked you to pass on these words to me?" "I can't be sure." "Let's have it," I said. Leaving aside the unduly emotional content, she said that despite the self-loathing involved in giving somebody the chance to choose their own fate, in giving them the chance to quit the blood and the death gracefully, proudly, and with no loss of dignity, one might inadvertently be placing one's scrotum on the block beneath a rusty sickle and leaving oneself without any right-hand man just when you need them most. The all-seeing, all-knowing, wise old woman with a hole in her head? I chuckled coldly. Who loves sticking her nose in others' business. She's made a mistake this time. The nymph copula is a generous and kind mistress, and she is rarely mistaken. I can't argue with that, I sighed. Next up, medical procedures. And where did you say the nearest ATM was? Current time, 10:44. Balance, 4,920. Looking thoughtfully at the little fella revolving slowly in the window, I realized I was going to acquire it anyway. But that did not stop me raging against the obvious shortcomings of the not inexpensive item. A piggy, a.k.a. pig, piglet, oinker, was a shortened needle gun which fired less powerfully and with a shorter range, but was capable, with one press of the trigger button, of instantly discharging a whole magazine, sending a fan of piercing needles towards the target. It had two types of magazine, 5 and 10 round, but you could only buy the 5-round version, and you were limited to 5 of them. And that, come to think of it, was as good an argument as any for snapping them up quickly, for there were only 2 piggies in the window. I was able to obtain all these goodies just as soon as I reached the rank HFL B+2, which I had done yesterday. Price, 5,500 sol. The price of a magazine, a tenner. Recharging was charged at the usual rate. The system had not been stingy there. Pressing a finger to the dark sensor, I confirmed my purchase and watched as one of the little fellas slowed its rotation and began to move towards the ballistic glass of the weapon's trade-mat. "Congratulations on your new toy, Commander," said Rek, who was sitting by the wall and lovingly stroking the just-purchased needle gun that lay on his knees. "Shall we set up a firing range in that shit-swamped corridor?" "And do the whole assault course 4 times each?" I replied, nodding and holding out a hand to take the 5mm needle gun. "I'll just buy some spare ammo and we can move out." I acquired 20 clips of different kinds and put some in my belt bag and the rest in my backpack. Now that I had 2 shooters, I would have to sweat for a while to get the hang of using them simultaneously. Balance, 4,320. "Who? Pfft, shit!" Rex shouted hoarsely, resurfacing and clearing his throat after a wave of thick sewage had caught him up and washed over him, knocking off his hood, mask, and goggles, and washing his eyes and filling his mouth with corrosive green-brown muck full of black lumps. "Hand!" I shouted, stretching out on the jerking plastic crates and extending my left hand to the orc, who was being carried away by the next wave. "Come on, pull!" Rek heaved and managed to catch hold, but his wet fingers slipped. Then he threw his needle gun, striking my shoulder, and held on to the strap. Digging my boots into the raised edge of a crate, I arrested the orc's advance, and slightly shifting the stock of the piggy which was propped against another crate, I let off all 5 needles and shredded a leaping gray, scaly beastie. The plucks fell noiselessly into the shit, and I rolled over, hastily reloaded, and spent another 5 needles on the next one, which dropped straight out of the sky and landed on its side on a wall ledge, but nonetheless managed to find its feet. "Wreck, left." "Fuck!" The orc rolled around the raft, shrieking furiously. His mouth skewed. He was trying to pull out his freaking eye, which wouldn't let him see anything due to the caustic crap that had gotten in under his eyelids. "I can't see! I can't fucking see! Where is it?" His knife appeared in his hand and his needle gun flew behind his shoulder. "Where is it?" "On your own," I replied, dropping the piggy and retrieving my trusty old needle gun from behind my shoulder. 2 shots and a limping orange lump stopped about 20 centimeters short of the orc. The tangerine, which had fallen from the sky, had been burned by something and was already perishing, which was why it had gone on the attack. Taking up the smaller weapon that hung at my wrist and scarcely aiming it, I released a fan of needles and stalled an onslaught by two large, robust, and strangely yellow pluxes, splashing their grubby scales with crimson blood and slowing their progress towards two screeching zombies on a wall edge. Although what zombies have 2 legs and 3 arms between 2 of them, they're almost worms. I had no pity for them. I was merely slowing and killing everything around me that was of potential danger. The freaking siren wailed and wailed from the heavens, unable to desist from its prolonged moans, which worked their way inside and gave you the willies. The lights above us became manyfold more, and we could hear distant shouts and the clang of metal on metal. Some of the lights even grew in size. Fuck. I rolled again onto the back of the expectorating orc, and a corpse tied to the end of a cable crashed down in the place where I had just been peacefully warming my goblin tush. It sprayed. Wiping a mixture of muck and blood from my face, I helped Rack, who was groping blindly for a bottle in his backpack. "Wipe your face." "Shit! Where is this shit coming from? And what just happened?" "All this shit comes from the sky. That's another corpse just fallen. Stop fucking squealing. Rinse your eyes and let's fight." "I'm trying." "Hand on your needle gun, finger on the trigger." Rek was able to carry out the commands quickly, and in a trice he had hold of his needle gun and gently lowered his finger over the trigger button. I gripped him by the sleeve and pulled him to the side. "Go on." The orc pressed the firing button savagely and sank needle after needle into the forehead of a red Plux crawling out of the shit. The brain suckers were here, and they were big. "Reload!" After reloading myself, I rolled over to the fallen corpse and looked at its back. Had I imagined it? No. Freaking elves. The man was missing a huge chunk of his back, which had been ripped out together with his spine. The head seemed to have been deformed by a powerful blow or a hefty tug on the spine, and the skull had almost been yanked from its rightful place. "I can see!" Rek exclaimed joyfully, half standing. "Well, I say I can see, but it's all blurry, and it fucking burns. It's burning madly." "Shut up." "Yes, sir. And get down. Lie down." Were they being drawn to us or something? Another star fell from the steel sky right onto our raft, which was barely holding afloat. Noting its size, I frowned to realize that diving into the shit was not an option, for we were being carried by a river that soon became a crashing waterfall, and I would not be able to catch up with Rek by swimming through the shit. But we got lucky. Relatively lucky, when a double star that was heading directly for us stopped a meter above us with a protracted jangling sound. Crack, squelch. Half a freaking woman with an elephantine face and a ripped-open chest fell right onto my chest, her lower half remaining dangling from a short wire, along with a wheezing man snapped in half at the waist. Then we got lucky for a second time as 2 pluxes fell from above. One got its teeth under the poor wheezing guy's thigh, while the second landed on the half-spider-woman lying on me. It didn't manage to get a taste of her sweet belly fat, because I stabbed it 5 times with my awl and flung it into the shit. I threw the half-fatso in after it, but not before removing the brightly shining head torch from her sticky, sweaty forehead. Our raft swung around, hit a wall ledge, and came to a halt. Shouldn't we climb out onto a firmer and more dependable surface? No, we stay here, and we use the next falling waif as a heavy sticking plaster to connect us with a ledge by hooking the fucker's teeth onto it and leaving its rear end on the raft. And that is exactly what we did. At first I thought it wouldn't work, but then the raft held fast, albeit tilting slightly. Great. I quickly checked my weapon, placed one torch on the ledge and another on the edge of the raft, and kneeling down on one knee, I was still. I wanted to lie on my front, but I wouldn't have been able to control the situation above properly, and that was where the heavy, fat spider ladies were falling from. "Me eyes are getting better," Rek reported. "What the fuck is all this, Commander?" "Something's burst up there," I replied, shifting the stock of my needle gun slightly and aiming at the glorious city of Drainagetown's latest visitor attraction, which had appeared but 5 minutes ago. "What about that banging sound?" "Something's exploded up there." I corrected myself, throwing a brief glance upwards to check there wasn't a dead star careening down upon us before surveying the flooded corridor. Or rather, they've exploded something up there. Ah, shit. What now? Pluxes? Worse. That shit has widened. I wasn't lying. The blue-green jet spurting from the sky was now twice as wide, yet its thrust had not diminished at all. The menacing sound of remorselessly cascading water wafted slowly and heavily into our ears. Everything happened quickly. Very quickly. We had just reached the backyard of the house of Copula, where we had recently done some swim training. Taking a good look around, we picked our targets and agreed who would go when and how, deciding it was time to practice solo runs, since the foray into the cesspool had revealed the importance of being able to act alone. That was when Rek had run to the swamp and back collecting corpses, doing battle on the way, skipping aside to avoid ambushes, and inflicting serious damage with his club. I relayed to the attentively listening orc all the mistakes I had noticed back then. He took them in, mulled them over, clarified them, and eventually nodded, giving me to understand that he was ready to act. I showed him the first 3 control points and had begun to back away when we heard a long, dry cracking sound. At the same time, a tight blast of air crashed down, followed by a cascade of shit which, needless to say, flowed right into our corridor. And there we were just swimming along. "Elb! Elb, hey!" A familiar figure was jumping and shouting on a barricade which was now nearly lost beneath the rising sewage. "Elb, you freaking goblin! Rek, are you alive?" "Commander!" The zombie clambered up after her, and now shouted over the noise of the waterfall. "Are you alive?" "That's enough stupid questions, you idiots," I shouted in response. "Over there, look over there, you idiots. Pluxes, to the left. Yorka." "I see them," the goblin girl replied before a needle gun appeared predictably in her hands. Click, click, click. 3 misses. An enormous gray Plux crawled out of the shit, gave itself a good shake, and scuttled towards the trembling Yorka, who was struggling to reload. "Ah, shit!" I cried, pressing the trigger. "Stupid idiot!" "Takes one to know one, you fucker!" 1 miss, 2 on target. I didn't kill the Plux, but one of its paws buckled and it fell, rolling along the slippery metal almost as far as Yorka's feet. She was hardly likely to miss from point-blank range, and she sank 3 needles into its forehead and neck before smiling calmly and lowering her weapon. "Reload, and lively!" I shouted as my free hand, acting all by itself, reloaded my needle gun. "Lively!" Shuddering, Yorka hastily clicked out her spent clip, and not without a certain amount of trouble, inserted a new one before yelling an angry response. "It's already—" She did not finish her sentence, for the river of shit exploded a meter from her, and from the syrupy depths emerged another 2 Pluxes, orange and red, both large. Very large. Basque's club thwacked the orange one in the middle of its humped back. The zombie then fell to his knees and fearlessly embraced the beastie with his left arm, while inflicting all stab after all stab with his right at sewing machine speed. The red one took 4 needles, 2 from Yorka and 2 from me. I lent the zombie a hand by unloading my 3rd needle into the side of the orange one. There was no further need for reminders, as the goblin girl reloaded, took aim, and pumped needles into the orange Plux's back, after which it eventually collapsed. Standing tall, she slung her needle gun behind her back and raised her hands in desperation. "I'm out of rounds!" "Fuck!" I shouted, seeing another 5 Pluxes, which were flattened against the wall by the current, clamber up onto the barricade. As ill luck would have it, they were all of different sizes, and a couple were so small that the chances of missing them were very high. "Rek!" "I'm on it!" Bending low, Rek rated himself to dive into the river of shit, but I managed to check his impulse. "Hey, it'll be quicker to take the ledge and jump onto those 2 orange crates. From there, take a sharp left onto that white thing the shouty broad is clinging to, and from there onto the barricade. When I'm done shooting, I'll follow you." "Gotcha." Stomping heavily with his dirt-caked boots and spraying muck all around, the half-blind orc ran along the wall edge. I checked the ceiling and found no dome before sinking a needle into the chest of an emaciated, shrieking zombie girl with 1 arm, whose stomach was eaten away, and who had several small Pluxes clinging to her. She squealed her relief and was silent, allowing us the opportunity of at least some kind of communication. I immediately yelled, Retreat to the wall, Yorka, just as I taught you. Club! Okay. What the hell are you doing here anyway? Rescuing you. We don't need rescuing, I replied, sticking 3
Sample complete. Ready to continue?